Welcome back, episode 7 of Coffee with the
Woo!
Johns. Wait. The celebration. All right. Oops.
That's the smash
So,
the like button.
if you guys have been enjoying this, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Let us know if you've been enjoying it. If you haven't, if there's something that you haven't liked or you want us to change or add or whatever, just let us know. We're open to feedback. We might not take it at all, but you're always welcome to give it. Today we have a lot of great news, a lot of good, some good, some bad information. I mean, news is news. It depends how you take it, whether it's good or it's bad. We have real estate. It's insane. We have real estate that's insane in some areas in a good way, and then insane in some areas in a really bad way. So we're going to cover both of those. We're going to be talking about more unemployment and issues that are coming down that we can expect that's going to affect your business and how things develop moving forward. Again, stimulus talks. That's just a never.
Stimulus talks.
Yeah, that's a never ending.
It's not going. It's going. It's not going. Oh, we hate everybody. We're still going to talk. We're not going to talk. Like, oh
Yes.
my God.
So we'll see what the hell's going on with all that. We're gonna. I mean, a lot of things to talk about, and then they had the vice presidential debate, and then the virtual debate that Trump doesn't want to do. So a lot going on in the news. I'm your host, John Barbarian. With me is Mr. John Barr. Mr.
Co-host.
I don't need any facts to argue my points.
That is bullshit. Come on now. I use all the real facts.
Yeah.
You just don't want to believe them.
Right. I don't want to believe your facts.
You believe CNN facts.
First story in the line. San Antonio home prices have increased twice as fast as local wages. So, let's get into that.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing I see with that is it's something I've been talking about in my market updates that I always do, is that when you look at wages, like what makes a housing price go up? Yes, there's a lot of factors that go in, interest rates and everything like that, home prices going up and stuff. So there's a lot of that built into it. With the interest rates dropping over the course of a year by like a full percent, it kind of distorts the numbers a little bit. People see, oh my God, we're in such a housing crisis, but they're just going off of wage growth to housing growth. But when you drop an interest rate, that allows an extra like $150 the payment, when over an interest rate, like you're adding almost $50,000 to a home price, and it's the exact same price for the house. But it does show, and like they talk about in this article, that San Antonio is only, I think, 34th on the list of metros of prices that doubled. At the highest was Las Vegas, and it was 6.8 times the 6.8 times the wage growth, as far as where San Antonio was double. Vegas was 6.8 times. Yeah. And that can't go on forever. But it's also, you got to take in retrospect where things were starting at. Vegas in the last recession got hit extremely hard. So their prices went way down. Mm-hmm. And now they're going way up. It's that volatility, like you see in the stock market.
Why do you think Vegas is always so volatile, though? I mean, last time it was the same thing. It freaking shot up, and then it completely tanked.
Because look at what's their economy based off? Entertainment.
Right.
And so who goes there spends the big money? Mm-hmm. Big corporations with big budgets, with money to blow. So in the leading up to it, when there's a lot of funding in the economy, these corporations are flush with cash. They're going on big retreats. They're going there and they're spending all kinds of money in that economy. And then when it tightens up, what's the first thing to get cut from a corporate budget? Entertainment, leisure and travel, and stuff like that. They're slashing that stuff. So anything that's heavily based on that is going to get hit.
And then why does it go up so rapidly and so drastically?
Because they've dropped their prices, and now everyone's flush with cash again, and they jump right back into their old ways. And now that thing's...
Well, so now you also feel it's the same people that want to... Because Vegas, I mean, I've never been. But from what I hear from people that live there and everything...
I landed there once. I lost 50 cents.
You lost 50 cents?
They have gambling machines in the airport, and I was like, I can't go to Vegas and not put money in a slot machine. I put 50 cents in, and I lost. 50 cents.
That's how cheap you are.
And then I got on a plane and flew to Denver.
Yeah, like, screw Vegas.
I'm done. Never coming back.
So you're thinking that the people that are propping up these prices are what? Like people that love the Vegas market, love entertainment? Like who's buying all this
I think it's the next generation of people that didn't fall for 2008. to where they see prices increasing, and it's that where I talk about that self-reinforcing death spiral down.
Mm-hmm.
You have the same thing going up, to where that's what's fueled the boom of, like, they say, oh, these articles come out and they say housing prices grew 32% over a year and stuff like that, to where everyone's like, oh my God, I want to get me some of that, to where the people that get hurt the most are the last ones to enter the market.
So now let me ask you, right? So San Antonio, we're about at a
exactly
two times of a ratio from home prices to average income. Is that good or is that bad? That prices are going much higher than your income is going. Like, how do you see that with the real estate market?
I got two sides of this argument. It's good in the sense that money's getting the economy. And, like, what I mean by that is that somebody buying is somebody selling. So the house price went up. That means their money's getting back into it, and that's what these governments do when they pump interest rates as low as they can and put money in the economy. They're trying to get it into the hands of consumers. Yeah. So when the house price goes from $200 to $250, they sell their house. That person now has $50,000, and now this person's stuck with a brand new debt of $250,000. So it's good in the sense that those values come out, but where it's bad is that can't go on forever, because we're at negative, or not negative, but we're at super low interest rates. Historically the lowest it's ever been, and then wage growth isn't keeping up, to where you can't lower the interest rates anymore to get those price boosts where you're buying the same house for the same house a higher price for the same payment. That eventually that's going to go backwards, to where it's like, shit, if we try to raise interest rates, that's going to bring houses way down, because wages haven't gone up, because it's all based off of that person's debt to income. To where if the wages aren't increasing, you're going to hit a shelf where both of them just kind of freeze in place, and they both rise the rate of inflation. But that's also why you've seen a massive housing boom in the past 20, 30 years, is because interest rates have been on a continual downward slide. To where now, when you can't drop the interest rates anymore, the only way for pricing to increase is somebody has to have the job to pay it more. So the circus can't go on forever of like these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% price increases without more people moving to an area that can afford the house.
So, all right, well, we have Molly Hernandez that gave us a blue heart. Don't know what the blue heart is. You vote in Democrat. I don't understand.
Ouch.
Mrs. Kim, she's saying good morning. Good morning, Mrs. Kim. Thanks for watching. And the reason I was asking you this is because we have San Antonio's lagging behind in Texas on this ratio, right? So we have Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're at a 3.7 times, growing faster. Houston 2.7 and Austin 2.5. So my thing is that, yes, the homeowner's selling, they're getting $50,000 in their pocket, but now houses are also worth that much more. So what is that $50,000 really getting these people? Like, because when I speak to some homeowners and sellers, that's their hesitation with selling, is that, yes, I can sell my house and there's equity, but what I'm going to get for this, I'm not really getting something better. Like, home prices went up so much that
depends on where they're selling. If they're moving to a new market, they might just take that money and roll it in a new market. So say if you're moving from let's say Westcoast, there's a lot of migration from East and West Coast where they're selling these things for multi-millions of dollars, and then they're coming here. So where we might go up $50,000, they've gone up $200,000, and they come here and they're like, I don't give a damn about.
But what about the people here, the sellers here in Texas that are selling here in San Antonio, maybe want to relocate here in San Antonio? Where's this advantage for them? Like, is it just more along the lines like, well, yeah, you got more for your house, but you also got to keep in mind you got lower interest rates.
But most people also don't, when they sell their house, I make $50,000 here, I'm going to go with $50,000 on my next house. Right. They go, I'm only going to put the minimum 20% down, so now I get more money into my pocket, because you're borrowing super cheap money at a very low interest rate, if you want to look at it that way. Okay. So let's say I'm only going to put $20,000 down, but I get $30,000 in my pocket, because that's essentially taking $30,000 out at a 2.5% interest rate, that you can now take that $30,000. If you're smart, you go invest in something that's going to grow faster than 2.5%. Yeah. So, and usually if people are moving, they're not moving down price points, they're moving up in price points. It's very odd. We had a friend of ours that was moving, and the mortgage broker was asking why they were moving and what they're doing, because they saw it as a downgrade. And it was like, are you doing something funny with the loan? Because it was a federally backed loan. Right. They're really prying into him of like, why are you moving? This is a downgrade. Like, why you're going from a newer house to an older house in a lesser neighborhood, but he was doing it in a smart way.
Yeah.
But the broker
They
was
couldn't
like,
see that.
what are you doing? Why are you doing this? So most people move up to where if they take the 50 grand, they usually take it and go buy somebody else. But you think about it, it's still money going to the economy, because when they go buy their next house, that means it's money in somebody else's pocket again.
Yeah.
So it's money moving around in the economy. It's the same thing I talk about, that velocity of money thing, to where it's moving going in at somebody's pocket, to where if they're moving, eventually somebody's moving out of state or moving into state, to where, and that's what's pushing prices up as well. Okay. To where somebody moves into San Antonio, super low interest rates, and they're coming from the West Coast, and they pay a premium of an extra 10 grand on the house. Well, that's now an extra 10 grand that's now in the San Antonio economy if somebody's wanting to go from this house to a house over on the other side of town.
And that's why, I mean, like what we said last couple episodes ago, why we advise those agents that instead of focusing on sellers, you should be focusing on building your buyers list. Because right now, that's where it's at, right? It's not hard to sell a house. As long as you can put it on the MLS, you can be a brand new agent and put it on the MLS, and it's going to sell if it's livable. And we actually saw it, right, with one of the projects we did, which we're actually going to put it on the we did a walkthrough video and everything. And we're going to be posting it real soon, explaining how we went about it. We essentially flipped it in less than a week, and it was a really good deal. But what I wanted to show everybody is, as you can see here, these are the San Antonio numbers. So John puts out the market update in our YouTube channel and everywhere. So make sure you check that out if you haven't for this past month. It just went out. But if you look at it, we have the year-over-year price increase of 12%, of the average price. The medium went up 11%. Total sales went up 7%. And this is just a snapshot. In the actual video, he goes over why all these things are happening. But, I mean, the biggest thing is look at months of inventory. I mean, months of inventory are ridiculously low. We're at 2%, at 2 months, at 2.13 months of inventory. That is insanely low. When
your balanced market is 6 months of inventory. So
right.
Like the lower that number gets, the hotter that market is becoming.
Yeah, and I mean that's just, it's nuts. I mean, those numbers are insane, and it just goes to show the kind of market that we're in right now. And you need to, as an investor, as an agent, as anybody in real estate, even as a homeowner, you need to know. Well, I mean, that's why refinances have been going up. More and more people are refinancing. It's a crazy market that we're in. So if you haven't already, we'll put the link below later, or if you're watching the replay, we're gonna post it above here on the card. But check out the market update. It's some crazy information. So pretty much the next article that we were reading is there's no housing market slowdown, right? As real estate agents report a busy fall. So in September, the National Association of Realtors said that the contract signings were up 23% year over year. Now here's my question. 23% year over year. It's understandable because we had the whole spring and beginning of the summertime when usually real estate is the hottest. We hit a huge, mostly the springtime, we hit a huge slowdown, right? People were like scared out of their mind. Not many people were buying.
March and April.
Yeah. So does this mean that this same wave and this same interest is going to carry into the winter months? Usually winter months, that's when we see our drops. But being that we had it in spring and people are desperate, like what are you thinking is going to be the data for the winter time?
I think it's still going to be up year over year, but I don't think it's going to be up because I think it was the month of July. We were up like 25% year over year on total solds and sales volumes,
right,
and stuff like that. I don't know what the September numbers are yet, as that data hasn't come out for here in San Antonio. And once it comes up, I'll put it in the market update for the end of the year for September. But I can see that it is up. But I think it was up 23%, and then you just had the slide up, and it was only up 14%. So it is slowing down year over year, but I think we will still get a growth year over year, just because there's no inventory. And then like what you're having now on some of the topics we're talking about is like there's a lot of people fleeing the coasts. Yeah. And moving places.
Well, you have companies incentivizing people to leave.
Companies that we've talked about in previous ones, where something like Stripe's paying you $20,000 to move to a cheaper market.
Insane.
And I mean, you got a caveat to that, but even then we talked about cost of living from San Francisco to here is like 40% cheaper here, and they're only saying you got to take a 10% pay cut. So a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to move there. So I think you are still going to have those price jumps.
So let me post 2 scenarios. Schools open up, right? Kids go back to school. This was the biggest reason why a lot of people were buying houses, is because they had their kids home, they were working from home, their kids were studying from home, they needed the space, they needed the extra office rooms, all of this. Schools open up, kids go back to school. Will this affect and in fact slow down the marketing frenzy? Because now people are like, all right, we don't have to necessarily move because kids are going back to school. We're getting our normalcy back. All is good. And then the other side is there is still talk of maybe we do get another shutdown. Mm-hmm. So if we get another shutdown, are we going to see another spike? And people are saying, all right, screw this. We're definitely not staying here anymore. We need to move. We need a bigger space. Like, what do you see on both of those scenarios? Like, do you see that happening, slowing down or speeding up?
Obviously, this is the thing. It's time will tell. It's like you're going to have one scenario where it speeds up, but then you're going to have another scenario where it slows down.
But do you think those 2 factors would affect it?
Yeah,
like
I think
kids going back to school affect people not wanting to buy?
It does every year. It's happened every year in the past, like, I don't know how much longer, but the data I can see, it's like the past 8 years, it has happened every single year. So I could definitely see it happening, that it is going to slow down. But I think if you look at it from a year perspective like they're doing, you are going to see an increase, I think, for a certain period of time. But as prices continue to climb and inventory starts to fall, eventually somebody's going to be like, you know what? I'm going to put my hands up. I'm going to quit looking. I'm going to wait it out. But obviously, if you have a new thing come in, like another shutdown, that could drastically affect it in either direction. Because we all thought, shutdown, economy's going to recession, we're all screwed, real estate's going to start falling. Fell 2 months, and then it took off like a rocket, and we've just been to the moon and not slowed down.
Yeah.
So what that's going to do, I mean, only time is going to tell on exactly what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's going to be interesting. Kim, prymehomes market update link. It is in our YouTube channel, so if you don't mind just grabbing it, posting it in the comments.
Dropping it there.
Drop it in the comments. See, I don't need sound effects. I got you. You just put all the sound effects.
I've been practicing.
You've been practicing. So the next story, we're heading back to the West Coast, your favorite side of the country.
It is my favorite.
I know.
If I had to visit it only for the beautifulness of the landscape and the awesome temperatures you got, but everything else, not so much.
Not so much. So Portland approves measure to make landlords who raise rent pay to move tenants. This is awesome. This was an article that you wanted to talk about, so take it over, sir.
I mean, it's just something that I'm not heartless. Reading the article, I see why they did it. And don't you raise your eyebrow at me for that. But it's just showing the extent that they're willing to go. So what is the meat and potatoes of this thing? Basically,
that was
Portland,
a nice Kansas saying right there. What is the meat and potatoes?
Bro, you've never
Get
heard
some
that?
meat and taters on this story.
This guy, all the sayings I say, he's like, never heard that before. If you ask people, they're like, yeah, I've heard that. I mean, how many people have heard the saying meat and potatoes before? I'm just talking about
we're more direct in New York than getting so creative with our sayings.
You guys
it's
are
just
boring.
funny.
That's what you guys are.
Go ahead.
But anyways,
Portland
the city of Portland approved a measure that makes landlords who raise their rent pay to relocate their tenant. So if they have a lease coming up and they say, look, market rents have risen an extra $100, you've taken my tax rates to new levels, because now all these states that have been poorly budgeted and run, the ones that are, I mean, the main one of the sticking points of the stimulus bill is state and local funding, because they know their budgets are blown apart, especially in more of the blue run states. So they're hurt the worst. So they have to raise revenue somewhere. So they're going to start raising taxes. Yeah. But now you're approving a measure that's saying, we're going to raise our taxes, but if you raise your rents and your tenant can't afford it, and says because of the coronavirus, you now need to pay to move that tenant to a whole new house. And it's not cheap to move somebody. It's not, okay, you raise your rent to $200 a month. That's like $2,400 over the course of the year. Probably cost about that much to move somebody somewhere else. And they already have rent control in Portland where you can't raise it more than 10%.
Yep. Without paying for their move.
Yeah, so they already have that in their code that if you raise it more than 10%, you then have to pay for them to move again. You can do it, but it's a form of rent control. And this is another form of rent control to where it just takes one stroke of a pen again to be like, we're just going to leave this permanent. Or we're going to do a version of it permanent. They already have it at 10% if you raise it more than that. But their values over on those West Coast have risen on significantly more than 10%.
Yeah.
Year over year.
I mean, my thing is just... landlords are not just going to up and raise their rents just for the hell of it, right? Because if the demand's not there, they're going to raise their rents, and then they're going to have to deal with vacancies because nobody's going to pay those rents. So if they're raising it, it's because the market can bear it, right? So
there's proof that somebody can afford that rate.
Exactly. So now Portland's stepping in and forcing it, and the mayor of Portland says, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and we need to do everything we can to keep Portlanders in their home, right? Simply put, this is a public health issue. Stable housing is a foundation of health, and the relief measure will help protect Portland renters through the worst of this crisis. Keep in mind, there's 124,000 renters. That's 47% of the population. But yet he goes and says, we also need to make sure that our local property owners who rent their homes to Portlanders are not foreclosed upon because of unnecessary added costs that make it impossible for them to pay back their loans. So what he said is renters are protected, but we also should try to help out the property owners.
That's right. I just love it. It's this utopia that a lot of people want. It's like, everybody's all happy and glory. Economy doesn't matter. Making money doesn't matter. It's like we all just kind of go laxy-daisy on what these things really mean. The more suggestions you need to pay this stuff than actually laws you need to pay this stuff. Or it's like you can't... A lot of people are saying like, okay, the people with the least amount of savings are usually the people that are renting and stuff like that. To where usually investors, property owners have a little more savings. To where even in his articles, he said unpaid rent now totals between $22 million and $28 million just in the city of Portland. But at the current rate, it will balloon to $120 to $125 million by the end of September next year.
That's hilarious.
But then, what was the party added in the budget? But we're going to add $500,000 in our city budget to help landlords that are facing these crises.
Oh, to help the tenants.
It's like to help the tenants. Like, okay, $500,000 to $128 million. You're talking about $125 million.
Well, and then it's also, this is the fear mongering that annoys the hell out of me. They say right now it's between 22 and 28 million. Not a small range, but okay, that's fine. You guys don't know how to balance a budget. It's understandable. But then they say it can go up to 120 and 125 by this time next year. How? Like, are we expecting this to continue for the whole next year? Nobody ever goes to work. Nobody ever pays their rent.
Well, I think what they're saying is,
where do you get to that number?
Worst case scenario, it's like, obviously in the first 6 months of this, from March to September, it's gone to 28 million.
But can we admit that it's gradually gotten tremendously better? Because a lot more people have gotten to work. A lot more people have that.
Here in the Midwest, Texas, it definitely has. But you see, Portland's where all those riots are every single
because they don't want to work.
And
it's not riots; it's peaceful protests. Okay, they're mostly peaceful.
Yeah, mostly peaceful. We'll go with that. But it's where this stuff is going to where, like, you look at the West Coast and it's still mainly shut down. New York's talking of shutting everything down again.
Well, speaking of New York, the next article that I was reading, so, you know, back to my little hometown.
Home diggity.
Yes, where we say what we mean and not meat and potatoes.
Okay, so what is the proper term to meat and potatoes of an article?
I don't know.
See?
With the meat and potatoes. We just say, here's the article. Like, I don't need to say meat and potatoes. Like, go eat on your own time.
You don't like meat and potatoes?
But, oven potatoes maybe, baked, not so much. But on this article,
you vegan.
Empty rental apartments in Manhattan triple, nearly hitting 16,000. So, more and more apartments are becoming vacant in Manhattan. And this is what I'm more curious about with all this, right? People are fleeing pretty much the Northeast, the West Coast. They're fleeing these places because they're still shut down. I mean, talk about the public speaking on what is, right? Like, they're shutting down for public safety, and the public saying, screw you, we're going to go where places are open, right? It's like, public doesn't seem to care about their own safety.
They're running things out. They're just like, you know what? See ya.
Yeah, so
Like,
they're
if I
leaving.
can't work here, they're gonna leave. If they have the means
Yeah.
to get out, I mean, what's really gonna suck with this is the people that have the means will leave.
Oh,
The people
100%.
that have the means are the ones that pay the taxes. Your billionaires, they're leaving. They're your multimillionaires. They're like, screw this. If I can't be in that city, I'm leaving. De Blasio came out, or not De Blasio, it was Cuomo. I'll cook you dinner. Like, dude, they don't want dinner.
Yeah,
It's like,
Cuomo gets it.
It doesn't surprise me at all that it's falling by 11%, and it's not just New York that's having that. We got it's happening in places that are severely shut down with all these restrictions. To where my point is, like here in Texas, people made fun of Texas because we were the fastest to open up, us in like Georgia and Florida.
Yeah.
Opened right back up, and we spiked. But then we brought some things back down. They made the mask thing mandatory. But now, like, I don't know about you or where you guys are watching this from. I drive around now. Traffic jams are back. Restaurants are now at 75% capacity. Bars are now able to open and stuff like that.
Not in San Antonio.
Oh, we won't even get into that. but the state is allowing these things to open back up. And I mean, you go to these restaurants, you go to these department stores, you go to these retail stores, you go to the malls. Like, there are people out and about. Commerce is happening.
Yeah.
We still have the mask restrictions, but our cases are a tenth of what they were 4 or 5 months ago. But we're further open now than we were back then.
Yeah.
So everyone wants to make fun of us for what we all these deaths and all the cases. No, our cases rose, but our deaths didn't rise. So obviously, it's like, looks like we did something right to where it kind of worked its way through the economy.
Yeah, but you're trying to argue facts, and that's not what most of these places are worried about.
Oh, you said I was entitled to my own opinion. Get out of here.
Well, on certain things. But what I'm more worried about is more of the trickle-down effects, right? So we talk about how we look at the trends. So now you have 16,000 apartments vacant and growing in New York City. You have rents have dropped 11%. That's a big drop. So now the majority of the tax revenue New York City generates is from property taxes. So the landlords have...
Property sales and income.
Yeah, you have... But property taxes is a huge part of it. So you have landlords that are sitting on vacant properties, and the property taxes are not cheap in New York by any means. They're insane.
Especially commercial.
Yeah, they're insane. So now you have these people that don't have tenants. They need to drop rents just to even get anybody in there. There's landlords offering like 2 free months. I mean, a ton of incentives for people to move in there. So now you have property taxes are going to drop. Their income is going to drop to the city, which the city is already going broke with a lot of stuff. Foreclosures are going to start rising.
It's that death spiral.
You know,
that's how
exactly.
It starts. It reinforces and it goes down.
And now I wanted to share with everybody is this article. There we go. Well, a tweet from our governor, Greg Abbott. And he's talking about, I've been talking with the NASDAQ Stock Exchange about moving some of their operations to Texas. They want to flee high taxes. I let them know that we just passed a constitutional amendment banning an income tax in Texas.
Hoorah.
But that's really how you run, right? Like, that's what people don't understand. When every time they're like, we're going to raise taxes. That's fine. Raise taxes. But people leave. Businesses leave. You were talking about, I want to say episode 1 or 2 about Rick Edelman. He was saying how the majority of the pretty much income and everything is done by the middle, white collar America, like middle to high income earners.
Yeah.
Pays the majority and move pretty much the economic needle.
Yeah.
Those are the people that leave these cities.
So they have disposable income.
Exactly. So those people leave the city. They leave these places that are raising taxes. They leave these places that, they're forced to pay moving expenses like Portland, and they're forced to pay insane property taxes for an area that's vacant because the city won't open up. People can't make money. They have to go somewhere else. Now, you're losing this market. That's what people don't understand. But Greg Abbott, even though he kind of was, pressured and he folded on a lot of the stuff with this whole COVID stuff, he still understands it's like, lower taxes is going to bring more businesses.
Well, that's why like the reason Texas is booming and it is having so many businesses move here because like we're the number one business friendly state in the entire union.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of businesses are moving here.
Oh.
That's why a lot of companies are moving.
Tennessee is up there.
It's up there, but it's not number one. It's like number 6.
It's up there.
Florida's ahead of it.
Way to go, Texas, says Molly Hernandez. That is right.
But
and she's from California. Was from. She's a rehabilitated Californian.
There you go. What is that? In recovery. In recovery? No.
She's still in recovery?
Still in recovery.
She's not going through any California withdrawals?
Oh, I mean, if you've ever been to California, you're going to have some withdrawals. It is absolutely beautiful, perfect. You would like it because it's like 55 to 75, 80 degrees year-round. Like,
except that the people there are very
sick. Yeah, well, except for the rest of everything else. That's why I was just talking about the climate. But anyways, like it doesn't surprise me. It like this stuff you see, and now like the next thing we're talking about is
back to the West Coast.
We'll just jump over the middle to where this image is super small. San Francisco office rents tumble and show no sign of bottoming out to where they have fallen 20% year over year, and there's no sign of a bottom as big tech firms are exploring cheaper cities and allowing employees to work from home. It's like shocking. And it's like, and it's their own fault. It's like, if you let the things open back up and let people make their own decisions, not the government thinking for everybody, that these places are like, you know what, screw it. We're out. Like, it just doesn't, I mean, there's all kinds of people, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, Elon Musk, are talking about leaving. Like Apple headquarters, you go to Austin, you got Apple, you got Google, you got Facebook. Like they already have major hubs in these
and those are
states.
The major billion-dollar brands, right? But then all the smaller
ones
that they still, you know, you say, oh, they're small. Yeah, but they're still carrying a couple hundred employees. You know, all of these things, and then that's it. We go back to the trickle effect. These people are not making chump change, right? So you're moving those employees. That affects housing market. That affects consumerism. That affects everything, and it starts trickling down to more.
Well, and like, I mean, it doesn't surprise me when like they shut everything down. Even if it happened, say we were across the board, everyone was shut down as equally.
Yeah,
you still have a bar of income taxes, the cost of operating in a West Coast or Northeast or West Coast, Midwest, and the South. Like it's just like you look at it like corporate tax rate or income tax. In California, I think it's like 13%. Texas, it's 0. Corporate taxes are higher in California. Texas, they're significantly less. To where they're like, we need to cut costs. I get they're equal side by side as far as everything was shut down. They're still going to make that move. But now you add that these states are allowing people to commerce and move about and have their freedoms and liberties. That just adds to top of the taxes, and this is like, all right, this is the final straw that broke the camel's back. You heard that saying? Straw that broke the camel's back?
I've heard that one, yes, sir.
Oh my God, ladies and gentlemen, we got a modern person here nowadays.
But modern? You're saying old ass sayings. That's not modern.
No, get out of here. But that does not surprise me one bit.
But listen to this freaking disgusting capitalist that's on our comments. It grosses me out when I see capitalists. But she says she is going through withdrawals all day long, but likes her money. Just gross. You're such a capitalist that you like to keep the money you earn. That's so bad. Don't you know the policy is to give it away? You work hard and then you give it away. That is the new American dream.
But my long-term worry with this stuff is if it spreads.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, man.
Siri wants to join the conversation.
Yeah, apparently.
I told you, Amazon doesn't like it when we talk about these things.
But you have, like, where do these big firms, these big states, and these people get their money? They get it from banks.
Yeah.
Banks are not local anymore. They're getting them from the big five, and they spread them everywhere. To where if you and that's where their biggest loans are, their biggest risk exposures. To where these states are they're hinged on growth. They have to grow, otherwise they revert and they go backwards so fast because there is so much debt pumped in out there at whatever interest rates may be. Mm-hmm. To where that can become systemic and it can spread and hurt the overall economy, because when you look at it, like, yes, we have Texas and Florida and like Arizona and stuff that are big producers that are in the top, but you look at Washington, Oregon, California, New York. There's a lot of money. When you combine those, they do weigh heavier on the economy than some of the south and the southern states, to where if not enough money gets down here and things transition quick enough, it can cause a lot of problems economically. And that is where I'm concerned, to where I do want to see, like, going on kind of the stimulus thing, like, if you ran your budget like shit, you should deserve to fail. Just kind of like we were talking about, like, you shouldn't be getting big corporate bailouts if you weren't prepared for something like this. But the municipalities, where if they don't get money, their states do kind of go down, but that does drag the entire economy down, because we are such an interconnected economy. We're not like the 1950s.
I was just thinking about that. Does it though? Because then where you have, look how why I like the free market, right? All these things were happening, yet Texas has been booming, right? Middle America has been booming. Because all the coastal cities are screwing up with all their policies. So people are adapting and they're moving inland. They're moving to areas that are not doing it. So then these areas are doing great. You understand? A lot of these areas are creating more jobs, more stay-at-home jobs. I mean, if you're not working in Texas, it's because you just don't want to work. But there's jobs. There's jobs everywhere. There's new jobs being created. So I don't know if it's so much that, that I think it's more of a political fear on their end of, if we do this, then we might not get reelected. Yeah. And where it's like, I think we should limit the terms just so they stop acting on reelection and they start creating policies on what's good for the country. And guess what? Sometimes, and we're actually going to be recording an episode on this about personal finance, right? Mm-hmm. There's times that with personal finance, when you take that responsibility on of being, smart about your expenses and everything, you are going to have to do some austerity, and you are going to have to take a hit of saying, okay, no more, going out to the movies, no more spending extra money on dumb shit. Like, we got to buckle down. We got to cut our expenses. We got to get rid of our debt, and then we can pick up. And we're going to probably live a year or so of, just mediocre lifestyle. But guess what? You're going to still live. And guess what? After those year or so, you're going to be thriving again.
And I think that's what they're so scared of doing, is like, they know it's the right thing to do, but it's basically political suicide doing that. So like, you're in office and you say, this is what we're going to do. That means we're cutting money. Lifestyles are going to shrink. People are going to go. I mean, it's basically the death sentence that you're done. But that's my worry, is when that does happen, because growth, debt, growth, debt, trying to stay in office. But eventually, like, you built a freaking Eiffel Tower on top of baseball cards. Yeah. It's like, eventually when that thing wobbles and tumbles, like, it really starts crashing down, to where they say it's no surprise, where they say, like, CalPERS, the biggest pension fund in the entire world, the California State Pension Fund, is massively underfunded, to where they have to get a 7% growth, and that's still not meeting it. To where, like, what's going to happen if that continues to underperform, and now you have these states having to cut funding to get their budgets back in place? They're not getting the stimulus package to shore up their budgets, and now you have millions of people dependent on all these pension funds. Yeah. And it's like, and then that pension fund now rolls over into something else, which rolls over into something else.
Well, I mean, we've been hearing about this, the pension fund crisis in California for quite a few years now, that they're saying, like, these pensions are severely underfunded because they've been spending that money on a bunch of dumb shit. And now it's like, if people need to start tapping into this pension, the baby boomers and everything, there's not going to be anything. And that's why we've always talked about people that are depending on their pensions to take care of them for, the remainder of their life, because that's how it was sold and that's what they work towards. They're going to have a very rude awakening when they try to tap into it, because that pension in a lot of areas, it's most likely not going to be there anymore.
Well, they say, like, Social Security, that the sooner they fix Social Security, the better they're going to be, because they say the trust fund was supposed to run out in 2035, but now with everything going backwards now, it's basically going to run out in 2028. To where if that happens, that's just their extra reserves that they have saved up to pay these things, but they're pulling from that fund, and it's not being replenished.
Which we know their way they manage their money is very accurate.
Yeah, and if it runs out, it's in the law that everyone across the board takes a 30 or 40% pay cut right off the bat, off your Social Security check, where if you're dependent, and then Social Security, when it was founded, wasn't meant to be your entire income source in retirement. It was supposed to be a supplement on top of your additional savings, but most people didn't do that. Right. They only have the pensions and their Social Security and
And
stuff.
if you
But now,
think
if you
about
take all that down 40%,
Yeah.
it's like people don't usually live 40% above below their means.
That's what I was gonna say. If you think about it, they say to be a more responsible person, your mortgage or rent should be a third, roughly 33% of your total income. It's more like 50% for the majority of Americans, right? It's more for a lot of people. It's mostly 50% of what they make. So now you're taking 40% off, leaving you what, maybe 10, maybe 20% if you're more fiscally sound to take care of your mortgage or rent and the rest of your expenses. And people are living paycheck to paycheck, so that 40%, they're completely underwater.
Yeah. But I mean, and what's been able to get them by over the past 20 years is lower interest rates. As interest rates continue to fall, it's that thing we talked about, and the question you brought up of like, well, isn't it a wash if it goes up 50 grand here, they got to go buy another house over there?
Right.
And it's like, it is essentially a wash, but if interest rates keep lowering, then prices continue to rise, and that's more money in the economy. Eventually, when that music stops, when interest rates can't go lower anymore, and because they've tried doing negative interest rates across the world, and it doesn't work like they thought it would work. To where when interest rates flow, like they have, and that's why the Federal Reserve adjusted their policies. Like, we have to get growth, real growth, not fake growth off of just literally lower interest rates and prices increasing because interest rates have fallen, and now it just those two work on a seesaw. To where if it hits zero, it's like we can't go any lower. Like, you have to get real growth in the economy. We have to create new services, and that's the thing we were.
So right before we started this, we were talking about these the next article that we were going to talk about is these zombie firms.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
So you have talk about real growth. How's these zombie firms going to help?
So first you got to define what like a zombie company is. A zombie company is somebody that can't cover their debt and their interest payments off of their growth. So say they make $1 million a year, but their interest payments are $1,100,000. But they're a massive conglomerate with a bunch of cash. So that, yeah. But where it becomes a zombie company is it can't grow. It's losing cash every year. Its market share can't go up anymore. And what's going to happen? They say 1 in 5 corporations is a zombie company. The example in the article was of an oil company, to where their stock price like 5 years ago was hovering around like $50, $80, and now because it's zombie status, it's down at 1. But a bank, instead of taking that loss, just refinances the debt. They know it's coming eventually, but they're like, well, we're just going to keep refinancing debt. Oh, the Federal Reserve's pumping a bunch more money into it. Well, we'll just kind of give you more money. Oh, interest rates dropped again. We'll lower your interest rate to give it to you. And it's disincentivizing real conservative growth of an actual company. And where this really hurts is because if this company now knows like, well, it's just kind of a race to the bottom now. If they're in a competitive market and a company's trying to actually make a profit, they say, we need to sell it at $60 because that's our bottom line for us to actually turn a profit. A zombie company come in here and be like, well, we're already screwed. It costs us $50 to make it. We're going to sell it for $51 and try to make a little bit of profit on it, or just make it a neutral thing just to kind of keep the status quo, to where now that competitive company can't compete with this lower company, and they suck the market share and they try to grow off of fake growth of just hovering in that, 1 year we can barely cover our debt, the next year we lose a little money.
So you have companies that are actually sound and have a profitable business model being brought down by companies that are essentially bankrupt, but the banks are not letting them fall. So now this company is taking more market share from this one that could continue to grow and produce more jobs, just because this one's just becoming pretty much a leech and just stealing all this. And that kind of,
Well, and it also brings to it that they can't raise interest rates. Because if they raise an interest rate 1%, now that loan goes backwards, where they go to losing $100,000 a year to $300,000 a year just because they refinance the debt. Or eventually it's going to be like, we can't refinance you anymore. But
when's that going to happen?
I don't know. That's just like, well, that's going to happen. Like, what's this going to do long term? But I mean, I do have faith in America. Like, today's problems are new, but they had the same problems in the 1930s. They had not the same problems, but they had real problems in the 1930s. and people did figure out a way. New policies came about. People were smart, and they did figure out a way to make it work. Society doesn't just blow up in it.
Yeah.
It's like something does eventually happen that fixes it, and you do get growth. And I do believe it will come, but being prepared for that time when things are shifting around, things are getting rocked around. Like you have foreclosures, you have bankruptcies, you have everything. Like you need to make sure you can withstand that time period. Just like right now, like we talk about in our like the wholesale business, like these guys for real estate, it's like they weren't building sound business. They made money, they spent it. Made money, spent it. They didn't have the cash to withstand a couple, like even a month without getting a deal. And when everything changed, nobody was buying for 1 month. They're out of business. It's like you have to have a pool of cash for a runway to where like the airlines, they're like they had to get a huge bailout in March when everything just started in March. Like they didn't have enough cash to run even like a couple months.
I mean, I think the only airline was Delta, I believe, that actually had their shit together, where they were like, yeah, we're fine.
What was it? It was like Ford back in 2008.
Yeah.
Like Ford, the big motor companies were like, we need bailouts, so we're going to go under and lay off everybody. We're going to go bankrupt. But like Ford was like, actually, we're kind of good. Yeah. But the government still forced them to take money. But now Ford's in trouble.
Well, and that kind of takes us into the stimulus talk, right? So we continue with this whole freaking stimulus political game that they're doing. And you have, Nancy Pelosi, they proposed $2.2 trillion. So you have her and the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, that freaking name. But
he keeps saying Munchin. It's like it's not Munchin, it's Mnuchin.
Whatever. But that's even the Treasury Secretary. Why he's pushing so hard for it is because the Fed needs more money. The Fed needs them to throw in another stimulus and big stimulus package so the Fed can print more money and do more printing for the government, for the economy, because now they want to bail out. And this is just for right now. What they say, $25 billion for the airlines. So this is my problem with bailing out the airlines. Until there's a vaccine, I was reading, I can't remember where I was reading it. I'll try to link it below later. But they were saying how when this first happened, airlines went down 97%, right, of people traveling. 97. I mean, yeah. Like so pretty much nobody was flying. Damn near nobody was flying. Now they're down to 70%. Still a ridiculously high number. Airlines don't have a large profit margin. So at 70%, that's a huge freaking problem, especially as we're getting towards the holiday season. When, a lot of these companies like retail and everything, they work on cycles too, where it's like, we're not making as much here, but we know we're going to kill it here. Where the airlines, it's like, we didn't make jack shit for the last couple months. We're still not making anything, and we're still not going to be making anything. Because what happens is that you still have a lot of states where people would naturally travel to go visit their family, where they're not going to because they're going to quarantine. They're going to do all this. So, hold on. And where I'm going at is $25 billion to bail out these airlines that may not be recovering for at least a year, probably
or more,
because again, going back to business owners have realized how they don't have to pay first class for their executives to travel.
My point I was getting at.
Hotels, travel, Uber XL, strip clubs, wherever the hell they go when they go to these business trips, they can do all these business meetings through Zoom.
Yeah, well, that was the point I was getting ready to make. Is like, airlines didn't make money off of your leisure travel person.
Yeah.
They made money off of your first class corporate CEOs that had the extra money saying like, I want first class treatment. Yeah. Business travels. That's where the airlines really actually made their money. But now you have these corporate CEOs of just being like, our business has actually been able to withstand maybe a little bit of hit. Like the people don't like it as much. They like it to travel, but I'm not paying for an entire week to fly an executive or an upper level management person first class out to a week to a hotel for this big convention and stuff like that, all the expenses. All of that savings, they can see their business is still able to produce and it's adapting and it's growing. And all of that money just drops straight to the bottom line. I mean, there's nowhere for that else to go.
Because they're making the same income, but their expenses went way the hell down.
Well, maybe not the same income. Say it dropped 20% because, you're not getting the business deals coming from flying over to do that stuff. But the cost, your budget for that went to zero. off of that. And that's a huge portion of their budget. So it's like, wow, that's a pretty big thing. I'm not saying like these airlines and stuff aren't going to come back eventually. Like, I think it's going to take a long time for that to come back, and their previous business model is not going to be the same in 5 years as it was last year.
Yeah.
So a lot of these places, and just throwing money at them is just going to make the problem last longer, because the longer you give them money, the less time they're going to spend adapting to survive. They're going to try to keep the status quo and then just kicking the can down the road even further. Towards like, stop kicking the can and like let people deal with it. And that's what sucks so much right now is the longer this goes on, the more life adapts to its current status quo. If this would have started in March and it basically would have been over by summertime and we could have recovered back the way things were, it would have been just like night and day. In 5 years, you probably wouldn't have told much of the difference. But now the longer this goes, the more people are like, I have to make money. I have to adapt my business. I have to get things going to work. And they're not letting this die because they've made it so political on the stimulus and the coronavirus. The longer you go, the more change is going to happen. And they keep kicking this can down the road. It's like, stop doing that. Let the economy realize like where it's at and have false intervention and let it get to where it needs to be. We need this growth across the country, but just throwing money at it and letting people stay in their old ways is not going to be the 2021, 2022 beyond economy. Like, so throwing money at it doesn't solve the problem. You need to get real growth.
What was funny is I was watching an interview Gary Vaynerchuk did, and he was saying, everybody talks about, I'm a capitalist, free market, capitalism, free market, I'm a capitalist. But when this all happened, it's like, the government needs to give me money. The government needs to bail out my business. The government needs to take care of me. He's like, where's your entrepreneurial, abilities and your capitalism? Like, why don't you adapt and work on a business that maybe will thrive in this economy? Why don't you shift? Why don't you prepare? Why don't you have the reserves? Like, you're a capitalist when everything is good, yet when things go bad, help me, And and that's kind of on that point though. Are you saying then that you're more of the point of view of no more stimulus moving forward? Like, what are you saying? Like, no more money?
I'm not at a high enough level economically to make a call.
No, of course. This is our opinion. We're not by any means.
I do think some stimulus does make sense, because I'm a big follower of Ray Dalio, largest hedge fund manager, Bridgewater Associates, very smart person, obviously. But I think where they're spending it and how they're spending it is a waste. So where I think where his thing is, like, you need to get money into the hands that people that move the economy and move the needle. Bailing out corporations, bailing out big hedge funds and stuff like that, or like airlines and stuff, like, that's not money well spent. Where we're talking about the things that we're just talking about, it's like business travel is going to take a long time to recover, and that's where the airlines made their money. So keeping people on a payroll for something that's not happening isn't going to move the needle, because these people are like, I'm kind of scared about my future, so I'm just going to hold on to all my cash. To where he thinks that, and it's not saying universal basic income per se, but it's like you need to get money to the bottom of the economy, and you do need to bring the bottom of the economy up to where they can spend money. How you go about doing that, I don't know. But they do need to get money to your, like, say, bottom 50% of the economy, to where those people go out and spend goods and can raise their lifestyles and can move up. Because it's the same thing, like the higher and more income you make, the less and less you spend on security and things like that. It becomes more of a leisure aspect. To where Molly Hernandez just put in here a comment, said that I would prefer travel for an in-person meeting. Zoom is great for short and sweet, to the point meetings. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
But I still think it's going to be a long time for these people to recover that, because these CEOs are short on money. Yeah. They're short on capital, cash on hand, and they're seeing these massive reserves that are coming in by not having this travel. Like, we need that just to sustain our business. We don't want to go borrow more. Like, I'm sure it's not all companies are bad. 4 out of 5 aren't zombie companies, to where they do see, like, we have a real problem. Yeah. We are going to hold on to this cash so we can reinvest it to sustain core business aspects of it. We can adapt for the short time, year or two, to use Zoom, use these in-person meetings, adjust things, and then let things slowly get back to it. But you need to take money out, stop pumping money into companies like that. It's like you need to get money to the bottom 50% to bring the economy up somehow. But I'm in disagreement with the level of the stimulus and where that money's being sent.
Well,
But I do
what
agree
I'm
that
curious about is last time that they presented, what was it, like the $3.3 trillion stimulus, the first one, they had stuff in that stimulus package that had nothing to do with
one of
stimulus.
like CARES Act, there was one in there for like $25 million for a museum.
Yeah.
Like, why are we
or
funding a
freeing
museum?
prisoners for, I don't even know what was the reason. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't be done or should be done. What I'm saying is that has nothing to do with the stimulus of the economy. So that's where I think the holdup is with a lot of this stuff and what, the back and forth. But before we move with that, like Molly was saying, no stimulus, but that means everything needs to open up so the job market has true mid to senior level jobs for people who lost their jobs, and entry level isn't going to cut it for them. So if you're not opening the economy, stimulus is needed. She said, no stimulus, autocorrect, y'all.
No, but I agree 100%.
Where I'm going at is more like, so no stimulus, right, for the airlines. Pilots make good money.
Mm-hmm.
So if 25,000 people, and that's just right now, they're talking about that's right now for sure that they're cutting 25,000 jobs if they don't get this money right now. And then more to come, right? Which they've already been off on their projections in a bad way where they were like, oh, no, this is going to be good until next year. And they're like, oh, no, actually, we're crashing now. So we're cutting these jobs now. So pilots make good money. That's 25,000, 30,000 people, whatever it is, that are no longer having that income, that disposable income, all that to be able to move the economy. So they're going to be affected. In 2008 and everything, there are a lot of pilots that were stocking shelves on Home Depot, right? Because what the hell other skill set do they have?
Universal transfer.
Exactly.
To where like they're a pilot that make well into the six figures, great retirements, everything like that. And yeah, how's that skill transferred to anything? And that does become a problem because now it is like that's high level debt that has been taken on for their housing, their lifestyles, and they say a lot of pilots still live paycheck to paycheck, or within like a couple months of going bankrupt, to where that's a massive amount of debt that would hurt the economy. So you do have that aspect of it too that they are seeing, but then it's still like, but yes, that's disincentivizing. Like people need to learn their lesson. The austerity you're talking about, like it does suck, but a good economic reset does produce higher growth on the other side of that trade.
My question is more like, if you're going to fund the airlines, instead of funding the airlines for them to keep on pilots that are not going to be flying anytime soon or doing jack shit anytime soon, why isn't that money used to instead help the pilots acquire skills that might help them in the
job
meantime?
Training.
Exactly. Something that it's like, and not that it's going to make you not want to be a pilot moving forward, because we know pilots that they love what they do and they make really good money. So it's like they're going to come back. But in the meantime, why don't we give them training and something that they can do right now, and especially that they're sitting on their ass, learning something that can generate the income that they're going to need, so we don't have to keep bailing these people out. Like, why isn't the stimulus more geared towards that and less geared towards, that her Pelosi, she had put on this one, on the $2.2 trillion, that they want to do the $600 a week thing again for the unemployment. It's like, it showed when they were doing that, people weren't even trying to go to work. They're like, screw this, I'm making a shit ton more money by staying home, right? Expenses, people were spending money at home.
But it's also, like we talked about last time, it's relative where it's at. When you look at it, it's red versus blue. Blue is much higher tax, more expensive cost of living, to where that's what I said. They want the $600 because $50,000 in LA is nothing compared to $50,000 here in San Antonio, Texas, or Florida, Georgia, Alabama. It hurts those economies, but it keeps them afloat. It goes back to why they want so much money for the state and local municipalities, like we were talking about before we started this.
Right.
It's like they need that money just to break even. But the middle states are like, we don't need that much, to where there has to be a balance between it, and that's where they're negotiating between, to where we can go into like Trump's flip-flopping, to where he gets the coronavirus on Friday. Saturday he comes out and says Congress needs to get the stimulus package done now. The day he gets back from treatment, Tuesday, we're calling off talks. The next day, Wednesday, it comes out. But we should do the $1,200 a person stimulus. We should do the airline businesses. We should do this. So it's like, now here's a bunch of bills like, what are you doing, man? You're saying yes,
Pick
no,
a lane.
yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah.
And like, so now you just have everybody just like, what the
Well,
is going on?
Look at the stock market. It goes up, down, up, down, up, down.
Yeah, you want
It's
to talk
like,
about
all
power?
right, what are we doing here?
You want to talk about power, like not insider trading, where you're like trading on that, but it's like, God, one person can come out and say it, and it's like, boom, oh, there might be a stimulus package up 2%, but we're calling off talks down 3%. To where it's like, my God, to where I don't know which direction it's going to go. I think something is eventually going to get done, but I think that's their sticking points, is because we've let some of these bad habits go on for too long, and it's basically east and west versus central and south.
Yeah.
That there's such a discrepancy between income levels and needs that if they were much closer together, and as far as like living conditions and capital requirements, I think a deal would be much easier to strike. But since these areas have grown so far apart, now you have these arguments where it's like, we want $100 billion. Like, well, the Midwest and the South only need 50 billion. Like, why would we give you 100 billion? That's your fault. You need 100 billion. We only need 50. So there's going to be a negotiation from that. And what you're going to see from that is they say they need 100. The Midwest needs 50. It's going to be Midwest is going to get 75 and the West is going to get 75. They're going to meet in the middle, say somewhere in between. But now these Midwest and South coasts have more money in their budgets to go do stuff with, and the coasts have less money in their budgets from what they are needing, and that's where you're going to see you look at it on a macroeconomic scale, you're going to see things flow and balance out to where they are closer together. Where you're already seeing with populations, all the stuff we talk about, the East Coast and the West Coasts, of their rents dropping, people leaving, people fleeing, everything falling, but in the mid and south, it's booming and going up. So you're having that one side's coming down while the other side's benefiting from it. And it's going to be another thing on top of it. If they get the money, they get the stimulus, that same exact thing is going to continue to happen.
Well, I mean, one of the things is, I was trying to look for it, can't really find it right now, but people are arguing that they're like, see, capitalism doesn't work. I'm like, all right, first of all, let's understand what capitalism is. You understand? Like, you obviously don't understand what capitalism is. Capitalism, you have the freedom. Who was it? Oh, Ben David, he had put it. It's like, you have the freedom to try, the freedom to succeed, but you also have the freedom to fail.
Yeah.
And that's the freedom they took away.
Yep.
So this is not capitalism. In 2008, the Too Big to Fail, I mean, they created a great documentary that all of you guys need to go see, and it's still relevant. The movie The Big Short, another excellent movie/documentary. Too Big to Fail, bailed out all these banks, made them, they made them virtually impossible to fail. So you're pretty much saying, like, look, go into business, increase your risk tremendously, so then that way you can't fail. That's all you got to do. I mean, when you look at these big companies and these big corporations, what is the goal? The goal is for you to launch, start raising so much stupid capital, regardless if your company makes money or not, as long as the idea is really cool and it's, #awesome. You raise all this insane amount of capital, and then you become too big to fail, right? And then you become a company that they can't fire, and they can't let you fall. So now it's like you become a zombie company. Exactly. So capitalism, but like that's when people are saying capitalism doesn't work. No, capitalism does work. It's just capitalism hasn't been implemented for quite some time now. It's
the boom time, like the old saying that it's like great times create weak men create weak times create strong men create great times. To where you look at like the greatest American generation would be our great-grandparents. Yeah, great-grandparents, Great Depression, World War II, and that boom time that took off after that. To where we were the top dogs at the time, because everywhere else around the other economies that sustained the world, Europe and China and the Middle East, China didn't even really exist back in that time. Yeah. And then Japan was destroyed to where it was the American economy. That's all it. And it was a great time because strong men created great times. Now we've been in great times for a long time where it's creating weak men that come along with it, that this crony capitalism came in after like 2000, the recessions we had where it's like, oh, let's just pump money in. Lower interest rates, lower, where this growth has been based off of lower interest rates. Another great documentary to add to this was, I think you watched it, the Inside Job.
Oh, yeah.
That one was great because that's more documentary style than The Big Short was more of just a movie.
But it was about the housing crisis.
But it was about 2000. Yeah. It was leading up to 2008 and stuff like that, of how they were able to manipulate the system to take money for themselves because they knew they were too big to fail gambling. They knew this was going to happen. They knew people weren't going to be able to afford this stuff, but they know they could run to the U.S. government and say, hey, we got a problem, and if you don't bail us out, we're laying off a bunch of people, and the whole world's going to fail because the financial system fell apart.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm not a fan of this crony capitalism aspect of it at all. So that's where it comes to. But the problem becomes, like, as soon as you get the taste of that free money, it's like more addictive than heroin, they say, because like once you got it, you continue to get it because it's cheap, it's great, the growth is awesome, and it grows and grows and grows to the point now we're like, shit, we can't even raise the interest rates 1% without the economy falling. It was it 0% for 7 years after 2008, and they tried to raise it from 2018 to 2%, and by the end of 2019, they were already bringing rates back down. Like the economy could not withstand any form of interest rate rise to even get to the 2% where it hasn't been forever. And now they're saying like, shit, we just got to blow asset bubbles everywhere and let them pop and hope that the market can withstand it.
Well, but that's the problem, right? Is that they're literally, because of all these bailouts, have created weak companies, weak men and women, all right, and non-gender binary individuals, whatever you want to.
LGBTQPIVCTT.
Yeah, the whole alphabet, all right? Well, everybody's still stupid. Doesn't matter how you classify yourself. But you have all this that it's created all these weak people, weak businesses. That now it's like, yes, they need to be cleaned out. It needs to get purged because it's like the business models these people have created do not work.
Well, that's what made, besides the U.S. economy being such the top dog after World War II, is like what gave them that room to growth? The depression from 10 years before that. That said, there was room to run. Yeah. And they say that's what brought people out of the Great Depression, and why when the government blew its debt to Kingdom Come to fund World War II, but now they had the capacity afterward to actually grow because there was a massive recession before that where massive innovation could take place.
Yeah, that's why I love when they criticize now. They even criticize Obama. It doesn't matter who the president is, but they criticize him on, but look at the deficit. Look how much the deficit is growing. It's like, how's the deficit not going to grow? The status quo has been set, where now you're bailing out. You have to print. You have to bail out. You have to give money away. You're giving money to companies that are not generating. How can our GDP grow when all you're doing is throwing good money after more bad money, and it just goes into an endless pit that doesn't come out anywhere? Where instead, why don't you take the trillions of dollars you want to print and actually invest it into nanotechnology, all the new things that are coming up, so we can actually grow a thriving company instead of worrying about, the steel industry and the fucking mills.
The dinosaurs, the 20th century versus 21st century argument. But, I mean, something I just thought of right there is, what if this is the quote-unquote perfect scenario to where our recessions never drop as low, but our boom times never get as high, to where you used to have much more volatile, but the trajectory was up. So now what if you have more frequent recessions, but the growth times are shorter lived, but they don't go as high, but the recessions are like this last one, is shorter, but doesn't drop as far.
Because
to where it balances out more and more over time. Because you look at Japan, to where their economy has been... my example is like their economy's been roughly stagnant since the 90s.
Yeah, over 20 years.
And their GDP is like 250%. Yeah. But they're just kind of slowly chugging along. They're never getting 4% growth, but they're never dropping at 0% growth. They're just like 1, 2.
What do you think that does to capitalism, though? What do you think that does to free enterprises, to entrepreneurs, where the whole point, the whole reason, and I believe capital asset pricing model, he said it, capitalism is the freedom to try for all, but without the guarantee of success.
Yeah.
Very well put, where it's like capitalism and free market and all that is the the peaks and the lows. I mean, in our own business, how many peaks and lows do we go through continuously, right?
Yeah.
But if it was a business, and let's look at it ourselves, right? If our business was just more like how excited are we gonna be to be working in this? Because it's like we need that pressure, right? Good innovation, good ideas need the pressure.
It will stifle innovation. You just look at Europe, for a standpoint. They were talking about it on the Bet David show about like why the guy founder of Spotify. He's like, why are our tech companies falling behind?
Clown.
He's like, we need to create a tech hub like Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's too segmented over there, and there's no innovation over there because their taxes are too high, and that's what Matt David said. It's like, I'm going to pump $1 billion in the economy, but then the government goes, well, hold on, but we need $300 million of that to fund all these pet projects of ours.
Exactly.
So it's like, screw it. And that's why your innovation and it's not really taking place over in these other countries because they're so indebted with taxes, and it does stifle innovation.
Yeah.
To where America has had the freedom to run, but now they're like the only ones left standing on that, to where if we join in the race, that you're going to stifle innovation, but it's the same thing. Like everyone's stifled along at the same exact time, to where it does suck. It's not going to be as exciting, but it's not going to be as depressing for portions of the economy.
Yeah, but then
when it just runs along.
But exactly that, you stifle innovation, and at the end of the day, what's going to happen is another country is going to implement the model that it's going to bring in innovation.
Oh, I mean, there's still
that's why the innovation
emerging markets.
Yeah, innovation is what the U.S. is known for. All the greatest idea that China's stolen has come from the U.S. Right? Because and it's not like
Godzilla. Come on, that was a good one.
I'm sure we had something to do with it. But it's one of those things that's like, aside from flying karate, like they don't really, you stifle that drive. And it's also with the stimulus packages of, $600 a week. You stifle that want for somebody to be like, you know what, shit, I need to take care of my family. I need to, do something to make sure that we're taken care of. So I need to learn something. Maybe I need to learn how to code. Maybe I need to learn how to invest, or, we need to take care of our finances. Like we go back to kind of the conversation we always have is personal responsibility. When you get hit, it's a moment where you step back and you're like, all right, let me reassess. But if you're not getting hit, because every time daddy's there with the credit card, don't worry, I know you're stupid, but here's more money. It's like, when are you going to learn? When are you going to improve? When are you going to innovate? When are you going to make it better for yourself? And we keep going back to the same thing. It's creating weak men. What I'm worried about is, and the idea that you had, is it's creating weak men. So now, does this mean that they're going to strive more for Japan and kill entrepreneurism in tech in the U.S.? Because they're like, oh, hold on, we don't want our people to suffer that much because it doesn't look good for us when we want to get reelected. So let's take care of them. Let's make sure, and that is more of along the lines of socialism.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, no, you can't make too much money. We got to give some of that away. Even though, yes, I get it. You innovated, you took a lot of risk, and you worked really hard. I appreciate it. Let me take all your earnings. And then the other ones, oh, you don't want to work? That's okay. We got you covered. Here's some free money. You relax, drink some coffee. I lived in Spain for 4 years where they have socialism as a policy. And people just don't care to work. They don't work. They don't move.
Well, that's where you had to go over there and they have you go to try to go get lunch at 2 o'clock and everyone's taking naps. It's like,
it's hard.
Everybody working.
Yeah,
like,
it's hard to go places. They stay out late because it's like, who cares? Our jobs, our responsibilities are not as bad. So you have all of this, and then there's no innovation in those countries.
And I'm worried as shit that's exactly where this is going to go too. And it is scary, but it's also like when you look at our political system and our economy, the way it runs, where it's like when you have unlimited term limits in the Senate, it's like they have to do the things to make sure they get reelected. But that's why I was a fan of saying, you know what, 2-term president, 4 years, do away with it. It's 1 term, 6 years. So the entire time you're focused on running the country, not going 4 years, because that's what I say. A lot of things Trump are saying, I'm going to vote for Trump again because he really didn't get a fair shot the first 4 years because he had to make sure he gets reelected. But now that his next 4 years he can actually do the things and not care and actually be a businessman running a country as a company. Like
and
it should be.
you're a huge fan of regulation and the government stepping in. That is
Oh
something
my God.
that where the government should step in and regulate is term limits. It's like you cannot be a career politician. You can't be like Joe Biden, 47 years in politics, and you just been in politics. Like, you haven't really moved the needle in any way. You're a career politician. That's how you make your money. You lobby and you get other people to pay you and give you kickbacks and all this, so you push laws. Like, those incentives, I think, are terrible. I mean, and this is something I told you, what was it, a few years ago, that I said we need to make enough money so we can buy politicians. Because that's how you play the game.
Yeah.
That's how everybody plays the game. They buy the politicians and they set their laws. They set their, all the stuff they want to do.
For years.
Yeah.
And that's where I think like the economy would benefit greatly by saying there is term limits on everybody. And it's like, hey, you only get 2-3 terms on the Senate side. As a president, you only get 1 term. 6 years, it's all you get. To where it's like, hey, you got 6 years to implement your policies and you're out. So you're not spending 3 years trying to be politically correct, spending the last year trying to get reelected, not stepping on too many toes, doing the things to make sure you get reelected. To where,
I mean, we have actually a very smart audience. So we have Molly over here saying, without the concept of true loss, no one will work hard and they will just stay stagnant, 100%. And then you have Dre talking about how Delta, what we were talking earlier, how Delta had plenty of reserves and they don't need a bailout, and the other airlines should fail and Delta should pretty much take what's there. And other companies are going to come up. It's not going to be a monopoly. There's going to be other companies innovate and do other shit.
Well, that's sort of thing. If they get too big and they screw up, they need to fail.
Yeah.
It's like, that's where it is. It's like, I'm sorry, you get too big, you screw up, taxpayers not coming to save you. It's like, you need to let those people fail so there's room to grow. But when you have these bad actors in there holding everything at the top, buying out everybody underneath, there's no innovation. That was the thing where I talked about last week of like Facebook and all these big tech companies being able to stifle innovation to where there's antitrust suits coming out against those companies saying you have too much power and you're not creating innovation. But the way their lobbyists are into it, I was reading an article on it that it could take years, decades for something to come out of this finding. They said, you guys are infringing, use antitrust lawsuit. You guys are going to be broken up. But now it's for years on how you go about doing that.
Yeah.
And I agree. It's like you can't have 2-3 carriers because they look at the airline industry manufacturers. You got 2 companies around the entire world that you got Boeing and Airbus in Europe. And it's like, but they're heavily government subsidized.
Yeah.
To where to just say, we can't lay off people.
Well,
and
you have the Fed chair, Jerome Powell, that has said that, again with the fear mongering, warned that of a weak U.S. recovery without sufficient government relief and argued that there would be no problems created by providing too much aid. I mean, if anybody's listening and that doesn't sound like an oxymoron to you, it's insane. Because it's like you're printing in more and more money and you're saying no problem's going to come from that. But because you're looking at today, you're not looking at what you're building. We go back to the same thing. And Molly said it very well, where it's like suffering builds character. And you do not want people to suffer. And I'm actually going through that. I have a 5-year-old. And I'm always thinking about, like, I want to, he's obviously going to have a much better life than I did, right? I came to this country as an immigrant. We struggled and all that. He doesn't have any of that. I'm better off. He's going to be better off. But I'm thinking, like, how can I create struggle in his life so he doesn't become a dependent person, somebody that needs to be helped out, somebody that needs handouts.
100%.
And that is exactly what they're doing with this, is they're creating more and more people that are going to be more and more dependent, companies, everything, they're going to be more dependent. I mean, we're kind of beating a dead horse here, but it's a very serious issue. And Dre says Power Rangers originally came from that way. I do not know what you mean about the Power Rangers came from that way. I would like an explanation on that. I'm actually curious what you mean with the Power Rangers. Don't remember that far back.
You see what Nuremberg just put on there?
Who?
Most latest comment. Not crazy.
Oh, I got to scroll.
I got to scroll.
Oops.
But it's a great comment.
Elizabeth says, when our kids get out of line, we'll tell them they don't have enough problems and we'd be happy to help. They usually straighten up, wonder if we could tell the airlines the same things.
I mean, I think it's not just airlines. It's just they're just the punching bag right now because they're getting another bailout. But it's still, they're $25 billion of a $2.2 trillion package, like very small percentage of that, even though we're talking billions and trillions of dollars. To where like the rest of it, it's like it's everywhere that money's going.
It's just the action.
Yeah,
it's the action.
It's the stimulus package.
Yeah.
It's the boosted unemployment.
It's the fact that it's like it could be a very small amount of money, but it's still an amount of money to an industry that needs to fail.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. So let's move on to our last topic, and we need to wrap up because we have things to do today. And that is Trump refuses to participate in virtual debate. So the commission for the debates came out and said, we're not doing an in-person debate anymore. It's going to be virtual. Trump says, all right, screw that. I'm not doing it.
Minutes later. I mean, there's like, they came out and said that within a couple of minutes. Like, not doing it.
Nope.
I'm going to hold a rally that day.
I'm going to hold the rally. I'm going to hold the rally, and he's going to do his thing. What do you think about that? You think he's making the right call?
No, I don't think he is making the right call because like it's regardless. Like people want to see debate. I hate the way he debated. Like I just watched clips of the VP debate and like that was a debate to where there's a little bit of interrupting and then they kind of let each other talk and like kind of stumble over each other's words. To where the first debate of the presidency is just blah, 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 where he interrupted him like 170 times and Biden interrupted Trump like 99 times or something like that. They're like, oh my God, this sucks. To where I would like to actually give them a chance to answer their questions and they rebuttal, like how an actual debate is supposed to be. To where I think it would be good to have a virtual aspect to it, to where it's like now we can actually have them talk and hear what they have to say, not just blah, 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 yelling over each other. Like, what substance did you get from this? Hell, I don't know what it was. To where I would like to, me personally, I would like to see that kind of debate. Like,
so pretty much have them both, let's say, through Zoom or whatever, and Biden is talking, Trump is muted. So even if he wants to go crazy, he can't.
Well, that's
what I think Trump doesn't want. He wants to be able to interrupt. He wants to be able to cut off Biden, not let him get his thoughts across. And it works both ways. It's just Trump is much louder. But, he doesn't want him to get his thoughts across or any of that. He wants to keep...
No, he doesn't. But I would love to see, it's like, all right, he's on his screen talking where everyone's seeing Biden right now. Now, Trump doesn't need to go on the fly. So he needs to actually listen, be analytical about what he's saying, and craft his own responses. So when he comes, he can say, all right, you said this.
You're asking a lot of Trump.
I know, and that's why I don't like the guy. I wouldn't want to hang out with the guy by any means. But I would love to see that, to where it's like you actually have to craft a response based on what they said, and you have to go back and forth. To where it's not 2 minutes, maybe it's a little bit longer because now you need the time to collect your thoughts. You got your team of analysts behind you trying to say, all right, what's the best response to this? Not just on the fly, scrambling and throwing things out, trying to trip each other up. Like they'll trip up themselves enough, especially in a town hall aspect where the questions aren't quite prompted, to where the audience gets to ask a random question and they get to respond. I would love to see that, to where on the fly, they have to answer a question, and then the next person has to think about the response and not just blabble on and go on some tangent and cut each other off forever. I would love to see that. I think he's making the wrong call.
Valeria says, I don't agree with him debating in public if he's positive for COVID, but if they're going to let him continue to campaign, they might as well have the debate. And he had COVID. He was positive for COVID. Like damn near half the people in the White House had COVID. So it's like, well, if this is as bad as all of you guys are saying, then you shouldn't be allowed to hold a rally either, because then now you just contaminated 20,000 people or however.
Well, that's where I said,
what does that look like?
And that's where I think this
Well, they keep flip flopping on what the truth. At first it's airborne, then it's not airborne. The masks help, they don't help.
Yeah. I agree. It's like but then it's the same thing where like, if he's better, why can't you hold it in person? It's like, I think they're trying to figure out ways to where a lot of people didn't like the way Trump kept interrupting. So they're trying to find ways of saying like, all right, how can we create a debate and have the ability to control people interrupting back and forth? Well, that digitally creates two things. You now keep the people safe, the two candidates safe from each other, especially Trump's now asymptomatic or he's got the antibodies, to where Biden still doesn't have it, to where it's like we need to keep people safe, but we have the benefit of saying, all right, your 2 minutes, Trump, you're muted for now. It's your turn to talk. At town hall, you get an answer. Now, Biden, you're done. Trump, you get to talk.
Well, I mean, the issue with that is who the moderator is. So, like, I didn't time it because I don't care as much. But there's been people saying how during the Kamala Pence debate, Kamala was allowed much more time than Pence on the supposed 2 minutes every time she spoke. Supposedly, I don't know. I didn't time it. I give two shits. My thing is like, if we keep having these moderators that are left, then they're always gonna cut Trump off, and they're only gonna let Biden talk. So I think that level of manipulation.
You have that level to it. That's
Could be
probably something
a little
he's hinging on of like, oh, well, they're just going to cut me off and not let me have my time. Like, we're not going to play that game. I want to be in person to do this. But that's really this whole political.
Well, then you got to be more
right
strategic with your time. I mean, you can't just keep spewing off venom and just saying how stupid the other person is.
Well,
How about you actually talk what your policies are and what is it that, because that's what most of these debates are. That's why they're so stupid, because they spend the whole time saying how the other one's terrible, but they never spend the time saying what are we going to do to move forward. What are we going to implement? What our policies are? They never do. And you have it. You had it on the debate with the VPs that all they debated was she kept attacking them, and he kept saying, "Well, what are your plans? What are you going to do? What are your plans? What are you going to do?" And she kept, pushing the conversation in a different direction. So it's like that's all they do. That's all these debates are. That's why, to me, they are a huge waste of time because they're not moderated correctly, and the candidates need to be held to some form of standard where it's like, look, if you're not going to answer the question, there's no debates, and good luck whoever gets elected.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Where it's like, all right,
this is going to be a mess.
Let's
and
grow
then,
up a little bit.
To kind of wrap up here, we got a couple minutes left. I want to read a suburb that we got from one of our favorite entrepreneurs, Patrick Bet David. He started our mastermind with it the other day, and he also texted out and he talked about it. And what he said is a quick reminder. The next 4 weeks will be filled with more distractions than potentially any 4-week period in our lifetime. The key is to take everything at face value and only give credence to stories with valid sources. If you let it consume your mind, you'll end up having a weak fourth quarter. If you win the next 4 weeks, you'll win the fourth quarter. Time to stay focused. And I think that's 100%. To where like you read the news, you're going to get Biden's going to win, Trump's going to win. Like it's only going to increase the next couple weeks, and then even after that, I don't think it's going to be 4 weeks. I think it's going to be closer to 8 to 12 with the mail-in voting. People saying they're not going to do it. Like it's just more and more and more distracting, and it becomes that self-reinforcing circle. Like you're going to see it across Facebook, you're going to see it across the news, you're going to see it across everywhere. It's like just delete it. The world's not going to end. Well, life is going to go on past this, and focus on your own little circle of things that you can control. Yes, your life is affected some way, shape, or form by whoever is president at the current time, but it's not going to be a drastic change where one day you're making a bunch more, the next day you're making zero. Things will adjust. You need to stay on top of your own little circle and stay focused what is in your life and you can control.
Very well said. We're about your economy, your life, and your politics in your house. And, it is what it is. I think Dre had an excellent point. Trump will end up doing it. He would change his mind like he always does. Most likely. And then Valeria says the virtual debate will literally be like kindergarten Zoom class. And she's talking from experience. Those were a nightmare. So with that, we're going to wrap up. Again, hope you guys are enjoying it. If there's anything that you guys want us to cover, any other style of news, or anything you want us to talk less about, let us know. Put it in the comments or reach out to us. We're doing this for you guys. We want to put this. We know this information anyway, and we talk about it all the time. We're doing this for you guys to be informed if you're not paying attention to all the noise. So, give us, of course, subscribe if you're enjoying this. Give us a little like, and thank you for watching. And we will catch you guys on the next one.
Bye-bye.